up, guys and gals, and welcome back to another Division 2 build video. If you happen to be new to the channel or you're just enjoying the content, then be sure to ground and pound that like and subscribe button. And don't forget to reach up there, trigger the bell, and turn on post notifications, so that way you never miss a live stream or a video that is uploaded. Well, the new Diamondback rifle is out, and let me just say, I had several one of these moments here as I was looking and noticed a lot of content creators in their thumbnails. It's kind of just like the beginning of the game, where people just wanted to stack headshot damage and damage to elites, and then put on their thumbnail some ridiculous number like, 2 million DPS. It's kind of like the same thing along that lines, which is, it's not exactly clickbait, but it's not actually, consistent. It's just what's possible. But we're going to get into that. We're going to be going over the Diamondback and showing multiple variations, and you have to figure out what is the best for you and your personal playstyle, and then I'm going to give you mine. And first, we're going to start with mine. Alright, as you can see, my base damage for my Diamondback is 160.1k. Now let's go over the talent. Agonizing Bite. Diamondback randomly marks an enemy. Hitting that enemy consumes the mark, guaranteeing a critical hit, with plus 20% total damage. A new random enemy is marked afterwards and whenever you reload. So before we go any further, let's go over that. So hitting that enemy consumes the mark, guaranteeing a critical hit with 20% total damage. Well, I played through a whole entire mission, and basically I had to either just fire and reload so that way it would cycle to another target, because NPCs, as they tend to do, just like to run and hide and never want to pop up and never want to move at all unless you like throw a grenade in their direction, or like I stated, I mean, I had to reload, and then once you reload or just one bullet, it'll recycle it and move their mark to another target. So it became a more of a waiting game, at certain times, to where, I can just go in guns a-blazing and be more consistent and hit a lot more frequent shots at, I believe, 710k, as you saw in the clip. Or I could be more patient and more like a waiting game type thing, and spec into it one way, and then just basically stack damage to elites and just stack critical hit damage. So which is more practical? But let's move on. Deep Fangs, after hitting 5 marked enemies, gain plus 50% reload speed, then plus 20% total damage, and all shots fired are guaranteed critical hits for 10 seconds. So basically, you hit 5 marked enemies, you gain that 50% reload because you're at the end of your magazine. So basically, you have to hit 5 consecutive shots, pretty much to be, I guess, you have to be accurate to be most effective. So if you hit those 5 marked targets, and that's the efficient way, and then you get that 50% reload speed. And then for that next 5 bullets, then you have plus 20% total damage, and all shots fired are guaranteed critical hits for 10 seconds. And then Shedding Skin. While drawn, each time a round is loaded, gain plus 20% bonus armor for 3 seconds. While holstered, each time you reload or feed your current weapon, gain plus 8% bonus armor for 2 seconds. And see, that was a new random enemy is marked afterwards and whenever you're reloaded, if you missed that from the other top of the Agonizing Bite. And then, of course, my secondary is just my go-to M60E4 34.1k. Now, typically, you'll see probably all across the YouTube sphere people just going with the one-piece Wyvernware for the 7% critical hit damage. And then also you will see them using two-piece D&H, the Douglas and Harding, for the 10% crit damage, and then more or less just putting crit damage wherever and whenever they can. I mean, you do get a lot of damage, as you can see. I mean, it's easy to, do that and get over 1 million just by stacking critical hit damage and damage to elites. It's very simple. It's easy, but it's not really that consistent. PvP, but mainly PvE. The way it's randomized that target, either you're going to be just firing a round out in anger, just so you can reload and move that marker to another NPC because old Tweedledum over there just will not get up out of cover and move whatsoever. He won't show one little piece of his body so that you can hit him, kill him, and then move on. And I didn't really find it that effective um, because, I mean, especially when you're going there as a team, I don't want to make my other teammates do majority of the work just so I can, randomly just go for only the marked targets so I can occasionally hit that 1 million, hit on NPC. Yeah, I mean, it's a little spotty here and there, but I'm more about the frequent. I want more frequent damage shots. So if I can consistently and more frequently hit 710k every other shot versus, about every 5 or 6 shots, I'll be able to hit 1 million. I would much rather go for the 710. And this is how basically how I've done it. I went with 2 Healer Guard, 5% total armor, and then 20% hazard protection, and then 11,866 health and 43% damage to elites with hard hitting, and then a utility mod slot just for the 4.5% reload speed. Now on to the second piece of Healer Guard. I was more or less looking for a good Overlord that had crit chance on it. Or basically the crit chance and then be able to put rifle damage and then try to have hard hitting on it, or at least at the very least like devastating, but I could not come across one of those. But I know there are Overlord out there that do have crit chance on them, and then of course weapon damage is just a matter of actually getting the right piece. And then of course if you have hard hitting on that as well, then that is I would say the best way, because then you would get additional 7.5% armor, so that way you're not as squishy. I mean, you're still squishy, but not as squishy, right? But as it sits, I only had one piece with 7% rifle damage on it, so I'm missing 5% there, and then of course devastating. This I believe had like 3% marksman rifle damage on it, and out of the ones that I have, this was my best option. If you have better options, then go for it, but at least I do get that 20% hazard protection that does come in handy. And then of course utility mod slot, another 3% reload speed. But that 5% weapon damage comes in clutch. But let's go over the Overlord piece I have now. For that one Overlord piece, you get 10% rifle damage. And then the attributes are 10.5% critical hit chance, 10.5% crit hit damage, and then 12% damage to elites, which I'm missing out on 3% there, weapon damage. So now I'm missing out on 8%. So the things that I'm missing as I go along, I can easily hit 180k. And then of course hard hitting on this as well, and then it has 2 defensive mod slots. And the first one, 5107 armor, 3% total armor, and 1619 armor on a kill. In the second slot, 5773 armor, 1.5% total armor, and then 2558 armor on kill. Now let's go on to the Wybenware, starting with the backpack. On the backpack, 12% crit hit chance, and then I have 9723 armor, really low armor, and then a decent weapons roll at 8%. And of course, we are utilizing hard hitting, 10% damage to elites. And then of course, another defensive mod slot at 4339 armor, 3.5% total armor, then 512 armor regen. Now on to the knee pads. This is where it goes to personal preference. You can go with the likes of patience, because you're 9 times out of 10, 99.9% of the time are going to be definitely in cover. So you can go in with entrenched like I did, which is headshots from cover, repair 10% of your armor, or you can go with patience, that after 5 seconds, then you gain 5% armor. So it's on your personal preference. And this piece has 6.5% crit hit chance, and then of course an offensive mod slot. And I have 2% weapon damage, and then 3% rifle damage. Now on to the third and final piece of Wybenware, 14% crit hit chance, and of course devastating. And then it has an offensive mod slot, 2% weapon damage, 3% LMG damage, and then 3% rifle damage. See, if you're going to go with the one-piece Wyvern or the 2 DNH, you can get a Wybenware backpack, that'll have the crit chance on it, and 9 times out of 10, it'll even have weapon damage already on it, like the one that I have. And then, of course, unless you want to go the all stacking crit damage, and you just want the easiest way possible, then you want to find one instead of crit chance. They have very high rolls of crit hit damage on them as well. And I mean, it's if you're going to go with damage to elites, um, then usually the Wybenware pieces are going to fill up a spot because either you're going to have crit chance, damage to elites, a utility, or so there's a little give and take there. So it would have to be, I would go for the usually the one Wybenware, or you can go D and H as long as you mix and match. You can go one Wyvern here, then let's say two D and H if you wanted to. And here's a little wrench. There are R and K out there pieces that'll have a crit chance value and a crit hit damage value on them. But what makes Wybenware so good down here is because, as you can see, they have offensive mod slots. So I would say at least one of those be at least Wybenware, so at least you have an offensive mod slot for that slot. And the D and H, as you can see on the holster part at least, it'll have a utility. So if you are going more along the lines of a higher skill power kind of thing and then stacking crit damage, then I can see you going with D and H here. So it just falls into personal preference. Or are you just more or less stacking damage and then crit damage and trying to be like a glass cannon, or are you trying to go with a little bit of skill so that way you have a little bit of healing. So it's just basically personal preference, in my opinion. To be more consistent and have that frequency. No, not frequency. I'm an idiot. My vocabulary is trash if you haven't noticed. But if you just want to hit more consistent shots at really high damage, then that's why I went with crit chance and crit damage instead of just stacking crit damage by itself and damage to elites. But let's go over the character sheet. No one cares about the M60, so let's hop straight to the Diamondback. I want to get my crit chance up just ever so slightly. 53% crit hit chance, 73% crit hit damage, 70% headshot damage, and of course we have that 3.2 reload time because we get that 7.5% reload bonus. Now when it comes to the M60, as you can see, I get a 17.5% reload speed bonus. So it has a secondary, even at 53% crit chance and only 42% crit damage. But if I have to use LMG at over 34k and that much damage to elites, which is, you can see, 87 or 86% damage to elites, comes in really, really handy. And I'm at 83% damage to elites on the Diamondback. And then, of course, we have 34% all weapon damage. And then we have, on the rifle damage category, 38% for a total of 72%. And then also on the LMG, we have 18% because I'm using that as my secondary. And then 34%, so that brings it up to 52. And the defensive part, 11,258 armor regen, 38,921 max health, 19,461 health regen, 40% hazard protection, bleed, blind, burn, confuse, disrupt, shock, and poison. And of course, we're not utilizing any kind of skill. We're more or less just kind of Ramboing it. But in my opinion, since you're going to have crit damage anyways, you might as well get the best for both worlds. But if you're just looking to try to see how high you can actually, make those one-hit wonders, as I like to call them, just because the inaccuracy of it randomly just choosing, different targets, and I did a whole mission, and which is I'll have the clips here at the end so that you can see the way NPCs were actually acting, and they were just hiding and either just fire off a shot, reload, so that way it moves the marking to a different NPC, or you have to sit there and wait. And I don't like to wait. I just like to shoot and kill. And this seems to be better for my particular playstyle. But if you want to just go to the throw random pieces together just because they have crit damage on them, just because the Baked in of the Diamondback is 15% crit hit damage, and then of course based on the talents, you get at least you get 10% damage to elites on the lever, so not all is lost, and then you get 15% crit hit damage on the underbarrel or the muzzle, I should say. So all in all, that's 30% damage, crit damage right there. But it's just, personal preference. It's, in my opinion, just going with crit chance and crit damage instead of just stacking crit damage is the way to go. But I'll let you to be the side of that, and just leave your comments in the comment section below as far as which way you prefer. I mean, there is no basically one way is better than the other. Okay, in my opinion, my way is better than the other, but that's just my personal preference. I'm gonna send you over to some gameplay. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Let me know what you guys think. See, I mean, like, I'm gonna sit here and wait for this NPC to move.